There is still very much a crisis at the U.S. southern border with Mexico. Border Patrol officials and local law enforcement have been especially hit hard by the migrant surge. Congressman Jim Hagedorn is back in Minnesota after a trip to the border earlier this week. We saw some of your statements, Congressman, made when you were down in Texas. You know, there really hasn't been a whole lot of national coverage on what is going on at the border, but it is still very much a crisis. What did you find?
Yeah, on the ground, it's pretty troubling what you see. We went to the El Paso Customs and Border Patrol sector, which goes from El Paso, Texas, 52 miles into New Mexico. And on the ground there, the agents are overwhelmed. They're doing their best. They're processing a lot of people, and the policies of the Biden administration are much different than the Trump administration. They said it was basically on January 20th, a switch was flipped, and we went from where we had pretty much operational security on the border. People had to make their asylum claims to come to the United States, deep into Mexico and other countries. We didn't have this catch and release. But with President Biden, he removed all the agreements that we had with Mexico and the other countries and essentially invited folks to come to the border where they're processed and then they're transported, relocated deep into the interior of the country. And so this year alone, we'll have over 400,000 people so far that have been processed, and they're illegal aliens brought in and they're told to appear at some other point, plus another 200,000 that got away. It's a record. We're going to be well over 1 million people illegally entering the country.
The two sides of this issue, those who like the way President Biden is handling this, say they should be allowed in, we should have the open borders. These people are fleeing radical governments, they are fleeing drug lords and just horrible conditions in their own country. Therefore, the U.S. has the space and the money to bring them in. The other side of that coin being you do it legally. We need the border wall. The work on the border wall has stopped. President Trump was on the right path. Help people understand what you saw specifically and why you don't like what you see.
Well, I spoke directly with Border Patrol agents, including the chief of that El Paso sector. And they'll tell you to a person that the wall, when it was constructed by Trump, was working. And that when the construction of the wall ended January 20th, it broke their heart. There are actually materials out there ready to construct the wall, but President Biden has ordered that it doesn't happen. And there are material weaknesses. It's very difficult on the agents. They're taxed way more than they should be to do their jobs. It's been a disaster. But when President Biden tore up the agreements that President Trump had made with Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, countries like that, he invited everyone to come to the border, knowing that they would be processed and brought into the country, and then asked to appear at a hearing down the road. Those hearings could be years into the future, and tracking down people that don't want to appear is going to be difficult. Also, the word is out there that ICE is no longer deporting illegal aliens, even criminals that have done vicious crimes in the past. And ICE facilities where they're usually holding people to be deported are almost empty at this point. So the word's out there, the cartels are bringing the people right to the border. The cartels are making $4,000 or more per person. The cartels are actually going after people once they're relocated in the United States, shaking them down for more money, or they threaten their families or the people that they're with in the United States. Why would we would engage with that type of criminal activity is beyond me.
Congressman,
when the agents are bogged down caring for kids and doing all these things, of course, it makes it easier for the cartels to get the illegal narcotics and things into America, where they're literally killing our people and our communities.
Well, have you been able to see the camps in which a lot of these folks who are crossing the border are detained in? I don't know if detained is the right word, or at least kept in for whatever amount of time before they are processed?
Yeah, we went to an intake facility for customs, for instance, where they are being processed. The difference now is, under President Trump, if somebody showed up with a criminal record, they'd be rejected. They couldn't get into the country. But under President Biden, we're literally processing people who have had attempted murder charges against them, drug trafficking charges. Some of them have to wear an ankle bracelet, but they're being allowed into the country. We went to Border Patrol facilities where they do these types of things, and then also to the processing locations for kids who are minors, 13 to 17 years old. We were at Fort Bliss, where they have an HHS facility there. That runs about 60,000 kids through there each year. You start doing the math and you're talking about costing the taxpayers $1.3 billion or more just to educate the people running through that one facility. And there are 13 more under HHS control, and millions of illegal undocumented people going through America that are using our educational services. That's just one example of how it's taxing the taxpayers, how it's putting our communities under pressure, and how we need to have, like you said, that system of legal immigration. We have more than 1 million people coming into the United States legally every year. We honor that. We celebrate that. Let's do it legal. Where we draw the line, where President Trump and Republicans draw the line, is at illegal immigration.
The politics of this paints the Republicans out to be heartless monsters, keep them out at all costs. There's that wall. It's very divisive. But as you're pointing out, the legal process, why is it that so many people want to do away with it?
I don't know. It's one thing. If you look around the world, the life in America is better than I think better than anywhere else in the world, but certainly 95% of the world would love to come here and enjoy the country that we have. We don't have room for everyone. That's why we have a process. We're very generous. We're the most generous country in the world when it comes to immigration. And that has to be good enough. We have to follow the laws. The Democrats are literally trying to flood the country, to have chaos, to try to get to us where we have amnesty for 20 to 30 million people so they can vote. Honestly, that's their end game. But what they're doing to our country and law enforcement is just patently wrong.
Okay, give me a minute. We're going to take a quick break. I want to come back and talk about the states that are allowing the illegal immigrants to come in and to be housed until they are processed, and like you said, years down the road. Give me just a couple of minutes. We'll be right back. I'm continuing my conversation with Congressman Jim Hagedorn, who recently went to the U.S.-Mexico border down by Texas and did. Who is it that you met with, Congressman? There was a coalition that you were down there.
We had 13 members of Congress from, I think, 10 different states. The group was led by Dr. Brian Babin, a representative from Texas, and we all happen to be Republicans.
Yep, and the whole purpose for going down there, you're not going to change the president's policy that he has right now. You're not going to be able to start work back on the border wall, which I know is something that you would want. So what's the purpose?
Part of it is to make sure that the people in southern Minnesota and across the country understand exactly what's happening down there. I wanted to talk with the people who are on the ground that do the work day in and day out and ask them if there had been differences from one administration to the next. And the third really is, look, the first responsibility here of the federal government is to defend the country, protect the people. What policies do we need to implement it? Turns out the policies that we had under President Trump, the ones I supported, were working just absolutely fine. We were moving in the right direction. It's a very tough thing to secure the border and have merit-based immigration, but we were getting there. And now the rug's been pulled out from under everybody, where we're going to have well over 1 million illegals enter our country just this year alone. Vice
President Harris was named to a special envoy by President Biden to oversee what is happening at our border. Where does that stand? What's being done in Washington? We're not hearing any news about immigration right now.
Yeah, we didn't run into Vice President Harris down on the border, I can tell you that. I think she and the president don't want to go down there, see it with their own eyes, talk to the people on the ground like the Border Patrol agents, because the agents are going to tell them the wall works, complete the wall. They're going to tell them that this catch and release is really bad policy. The agents are going to say, let's go back to regular order and deport the 1 million people that federal judges have already said are in our country unlawfully and need to go back to their home countries. They don't want to hear those types of things, and they don't want to answer the questions that reporters and others might ask them if they're down on the border. Look, this is a crisis of Joe Biden's making. He's doing it on purpose. He knows exactly what's going on. He understands the lure that he has to these folks that are coming to our border. And when you offer them, on top of everything, entry into the United States, but free food, free education, free medical. He raised his hand, remember in that debate, free medical, free housing, free transportation. Guess what? You're going to end up with, over time, millions and millions and millions of people trying to get into the United States unlawfully. It's going to overwhelm our country. It isn't fair to the people that have gone through the process legally. It isn't fair to the citizens that are here. And it certainly isn't according to the rule of law.
We're looking into the states that are telling the Biden administration, yes, you can bring these migrants to this state and that state. Minnesota at one point was one of those states, and Governor Walz, I don't know what the conversations were, but I do know that we reported on the fact that a lot of the folks who have been coming into the United States illegally had to go somewhere, so they were potentially going to be brought to Minnesota. Do you know where that stands?
Interesting point. So when we were at the facility that HHS runs at Fort Bliss, holding the youth from 13 to 17, about 4,500 at a time, they know exactly who the sponsors are for those children. They know exactly the address that they're going to. The government flies them or transports them there. And yet President Biden and his administration will not release that information to Congress or the American people. It's a disgrace that he won't be honest and open with the people. We should know where folks are flowing to. We should know exactly the extent of these operations. And so I expect that many of them will end up in southern Minnesota. The city of Worthington and others in the past have had many unaccompanied minors end up there. Again, the fact that they were sent to the border by their parents, made a 1,000-mile trek, very dangerous, a lot of crime. They paid thousands of dollars to do that. They were neglected to a point to get here. I mean, it's a tough deal. But they should be reunited with their parents and their families in their home countries. Their families should not be reunited with these children in the United States. And that's the end game for the Democrats. That's what they're trying to do. We can't allow that to happen. We have to have the rule of law.
Time and time again, people are like, they get frustrated with whatever the national or foreign policy issue is. And so if people are frustrated with this, what do we hear? Write your congressman, write your senators, write the lawmakers, call them, tweet them, get in contact with them, because our lawmakers are the ones who are going to do something about it. Congressman Hagedorn, I am asking you, what are you going to do about it?
So we have oversight responsibility in the Congress, and we control the purse. But in this case, the Democrats control the Congress, and the Democrats control the presidency. This is an executive branch matter that needs to be administered properly. Does the President of the United States have the will, or is he just willing at all in order to implement the law in order to protect the country? I think we've seen a big shift since the last administration to the Biden administration.
There is
I would turn it back on the voters and say, if this is an important issue to you, you need to vote for people that are going to go out there and try to protect the country.
There is no doubt that they are very different policies from the past administration to the current, and people keep they'll go on social media and they'll complain and they'll voice their frustrations. I think the most frustrating part, no matter what the issue is what's going to be done, which is why I asked you that. So I appreciate that. How is this going to transpire into anything, as you're now going to start ramping up your campaign here pretty soon, because you've got another election you have to run for?
Well, in the House, you run every 2 years, so you just kind of keep getting out and meeting the people. We're not, officially out campaigning or anything like that. But I do believe this issue is at the forefront of many people across the country. They've seen the difference between secure borders and what we have now. And I do believe it'll be a big issue in the 2022 campaign. I expect Republicans to take back the House because of this and many other issues. I'll campaign on it as I always have. I'll walk through parades with my sign that says "Secure America's Borders." I've been standing this since before I was in Congress. So I just assure the people, if this is what they want, if they want border security and merit-based immigration and a system of legal immigration, then I'll continue to support those policies for them in Congress.
Congressman Jim Hagedorn, as always, I do appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.